Well, I'm Ken Gorman. I have been running the medical marijuana program here in Colorado for the last 14 years. To get to the point, I've done pretty much all through the Pacific. I've gone all over the country. I've lived in Okinawa. I've lived in Japan. I've lived in the Philippines. I've lived in New Guinea, Hawaii, and Samoa. Everywhere I went, there was always a slightly different attitude towards marijuana. Most of it positive. But in the Far East, the only people that would stick up their ass were the Japanese. And so, but everywhere else, it seemed like marijuana was pretty well accepted and used by a lot of people. Now, the thing in New Guinea was that they really liked a different type of drug. They always see this buai or betel nut. And but they grew a lot of marijuana for the Germans. And I got a hold of it, and really good pot. Really good pot. So I got back here to the States, and I've already been kicked out of a couple countries, so I get back here to the States, and it seemed like something was missing. There was no real excitement. And so then I came across Jack Herrera's book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes. It changed my life forever. I mean, marijuana was, my first time smoking was the revelation, and then reading Jack Herrera's book changed me from a pothead to an activist. And I'd always thought that marijuana was good. I couldn't believe all the stories about how horrible it was. And so then when I read Jack Herrera's book, it ended up that it's a spectacular thing. I mean, I knew what I was going to do for the rest of my life. I was going to fight for marijuana rights. And I'm not particularly, totally involved with medical because I do believe in recreational. And I found out through some of the information coming out of Dr. Maloney's camp, he was the chair of the molecular biology department at UCCS, found out that if you don't smoke marijuana, you produce it for you within your body, the THC, and it's essential to life. And so then I found out there's no such thing as recreational use. So let's just smoke it all the time. I mean, there's a few things that you might not want to do while you're smoking. I was an air traffic controller for 20 years, and I never once went in stone. I realized I didn't want to handle, thousands of lives while I'm ripped on pot. So I never used it in my job. But at the same time, I can still drive, I can still cook a meal, I can still educate people, I can still do all my functions of life that are necessary for me to continue the message of legalization and what marijuana is all about. It has nothing to do with being a dangerous drug. And you get to know the facts about marijuana and find out that, it's been a conspiracy all the time. And this is not a conspiracy theory. We have conspiracy facts. We know exactly who made marijuana illegal. We know why they made it illegal, and it has absolutely nothing to do with being a drug. It just interferes with too much of industry. There's too many people to be damaged by legalization, and those people are the pigs of the world. I mean, the petroleum industry, the plastic industry. Apparently I'll probably be talking and preaching to the choir on this, but at the same time, there's so much about marijuana that when you put it all together, it's empirical data that we can shove down the government's throat, and anybody coming up in the future, anybody that's against marijuana is going to be taken out of office. The most important thing I learned from Dr. Maloney is because marijuana is actually responsible for evolution, and he can prove this. Marijuana is the key to evolution of all species. Then the people that don't smoke marijuana, even though they might be producing a little bit in their own body, are becoming monkeys. And my phrase from now on is fuck the monkeys. I just can't stand the thought that people will actually tell me that marijuana is bad for you, your system, or your society. It's the most incredible thing that's ever been on this planet, the most incredible thing that ever will be on this planet. So we're going to take it to the limit. It's obvious to anybody who's ever smoked it. It's obvious to anybody who's ever investigated the history of marijuana. It's outrageous that marijuana is illegal. and we're going to make sure that it continues to gain in popularity and gain in education. It's an ongoing thing, and we're going to make sure that it's legal one of these days. And we're going to make sure it's very, very top of the agenda, so to speak, for politics. You do have an editing program. So I've done a lot of traveling. I've done a lot of experimenting with different drugs, from medicine men to all out on the street. But there's only one thing that actually is beneficial to me, and it's marijuana. I'm going to smoke it for the rest of my life, and I've actually been put in prison because of it. I spent 8 years under their thumb. You know, it's a prison, halfway house, ankle bracelet, parole. I went through the whole 9 yards, and I was treated really well. I mean, once you can explain your position and what marijuana is all about, not too many people can actually stand up to you.
This is a famous picture of him. It's mentioned in magazines. T-shirts. T-shirts? Yeah.
I've got a bunch of T-shirts for that one.
Good picture.
Great picture. Excellent.
Good.
Okay.
Well, I suppose you'd like to know about my medical side. And the medical side of this is extremely important. I've got people with anything from Tourette's to cancer, everything in between. It's just incredible how many people need marijuana for their medical condition. Actually, it includes the whole human race, but right now we're concentrating on the most severe of the cases. What we're doing right now is particularly in my case, I grow marijuana. I make sure that my patients have enough marijuana, and that's the hardest thing to do. You would imagine that marijuana is pretty plentiful in certain parts of the state, but as much marijuana is grown in Colorado or California, there's never enough for all patients. I try my best. I've got plants out there. You've probably seen it on video. But I've got plants that are high-yield plants. I've got plants that I try to get to my patients, and there's never enough. So I have to go out and buy marijuana. And I buy marijuana from different other people that are growing for medical purposes. I try to stay away from street prices and street pot. Because a lot of times you never know exactly what you're getting. I used to buy the BC buds, but BC buds have become pretty terrible lately. They don't know how to ship it. They don't know how to transport it. They have a real big problem with heat, and so everything that comes from BC is usually moldy by the time it gets here. But at one time BC bud was fairly good for my patients. It actually filled their need for a medication. And now that BC buds aren't even used, it's such poor quality anymore, we try to get as much pot as we can. I have 100 patients myself that I take care of. I'm a patient myself, I'm a caregiver, and what that means is I have to get that pot. And so I've had police over here, I've had detectives come over here and talk to me about it, and they leave me alone. Because here in Colorado, we're very, very powerful under this law, mainly because it was added to our Constitution, not to our statutes. So our Constitution actually promotes and energizes medical marijuana for anybody that needs it. And so